Welcome back to Monday Musings, a casual conversation about culture and theology. I'm Justin Ely.
And I'm Daniel Chen. We're just a couple guys talking about some stuff.
No longer the stuff of Calvinism.
No longer.
We had 7 episodes on that. We hope you enjoyed all 7. I heard from some listeners they listened to some of them multiple times.
Really? I never heard that. That's impressive.
You know?
Yeah, just keep driving those listener numbers up.
Data up, you know? And we're excited to be back. We're going to be talking about something a little different this week, about consistency in our witness, but we will get to that later. But this is just a one-off. We're not a part of a series, so that's unique.
Yeah, we're just taking what we see in culture and
talking about it.
We're
just a couple guys talking about some stuff. But as always...
Has that grown on you, by the way?
You know it has. I feel like we've played off of our... me formal, you informal kind of style, you know?
I think it works. It works well.
We're reaching the masses.
Yeah, we are.
Type A's and Type B's.
Yeah, everyone.
All the people.
All the peoples.
All the peoples. So we're going to start with a life hack.
So the life hack this week has to deal with daylight saving time. And my life hack is, it's daylight saving time, not daylight savings time.
There's not an S at the end of that?
There's not an S. I heard it on the radio yesterday, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the Kroger's guy. You know what I'm talking about? But everyone is. It sounds weird to say.
You know what?
Right now, everyone.
I just looked at my calendar. You're right.
Yeah, there's no S.
Because I was convinced you were wrong. There's no S.
I had to look it up, too.
Daylight saving time.
Just maybe pause the podcast for a second and say it out loud. It sounds weird.
Daylight saving time.
Daylight saving time.
My whole life I've had it wrong.
But if you say it with an S, you're the Kroger's guy.
We're going to the Kroger's.
We're going to the Kroger's or the Walmarts.
Gosh.
That's is that a Southern thing? What is that? I feel like that's become more popular to point that out recently. I don't know why.
I think it is.
It's like when people say Chipotle without
you've shared that as your life hack, I think. Just stop it.
Yeah. Oh no, it was the things that annoyed us. It was the Christian cliches.
Yes,
that's when we did it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a good series.
Yeah. But anyways, now you can say it properly now. But anyways, I'm a big fan of doing away with daylight saving time.
Yeah, me too.
Or whatever
it is
that I don't
this is 2021. We don't my understanding is it was started for farmers so they'd have more time, but we don't need it anymore.
Right.
You have technology.
Yeah, and farmers also have iPhones now.
Right.
So they can set their alarms regardless of...
Yeah, this is not needed. This needs to go away. You people who decide these things, stop it. End this for us.
That's true.
Is this Nancy Pelosi? Who decides this?
Daylight saving time is like... It's funny, I'm like purposefully...
Daylight saving.
Saying it.
Time.
And if you're like, that sounds so weird. It's because it does. It sounds so weird.
Sometimes the truth sounds weird.
It's kind of like economics. The only reason economics works is because everyone just kind of agrees to do it.
Right.
Right? This is the same thing.
Are you saying if we kind of have a daylight saving revolt, we could tip the scales of history?
I think if we got enough people, this will be incredibly difficult to do. But I bet if we got over half the U.S. to agree with us, and we just didn't do anything, and just operated, eventually someone has to bend, right?
What would the like rallying motto be? Like, make standard time great again. Like, I don't know. Like, what would You know
what's funny? I don't even know which time was like the original time. Was fall back instituted or was spring forward instituted?
I think we were in normal time. So for those of you who are wondering, we record these podcasts usually a week ahead of time. So it's actually March 15th. You'll hear this a week later. So daylight saving time just went into effect yesterday upon recording of this. A week and a day ago, for those of you listening. I think we were in standard time. I think fall back is the standard
time. I think we should keep spring forward. I like long summer light.
Yeah.
It doesn't get dark until 9.
That.
Yeah. I think we should keep spring forward. So anyways, let's vote for that. Write it in the next election if you can or something.
Write in candidate.
Yeah.
There you go.
The candidate you vote for is no daylight saving
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Notice he didn't say the S.
Yeah.
Daylight saving.
Yeah, I'm going to have to
a
train
life
my
hack.
brain.
Man, that's life changing. So we always do an of the month segment. Book of the month, restaurant of the month. What else do we do? Listener of the month, and then this is the wild card of the month. So neither of us know what the other is going to say. So Daniel, what is your wild card of the month?
My wild card of the month that I want to pitch and support is I've been watching Impractical Joker clips on YouTube. And have you seen that show before?
No, it's a show.
Yeah, it's called
Impractical Joker.
Impractical Jokers. I think it has an S.
Does it have an S?
I don't know. I think it does. But it's for like childhood friends, and they just basically prank each other the whole show, and it's just really funny. It's really clever, and every now and then if I'm bored, there's 2 to 3 minute clips on YouTube, and it just cracks me up. And so one of the things that they do is they'll have 2 guys and bring in 5 random strangers, and they'll have a what do you call it, the focus group. And so one of them is like, if you could build a city, what kind of people would you draw in? Except for the 2 guys who are part of the show wrote each other's answers and wrote in like crazy stuff.
Okay.
And I would say it, but it really, I just can't do it justice.
Okay.
The way they do it is just so funny. And so go check it out. It's YouTube, so I think they do probably there's a little bit of language every now and then, but they bleep it out. So
there you go.
But it's fairly clean. But it's still secular. So if you're like only watch Christian movies, then it's not clean. But in terms of the humor and stuff, it's pretty funny.
If you only watch Christian movies, stop it. Why are you subjecting yourself to horrible acting all of the time?
Yeah,
I'm not telling you to go watch Game of Thrones. In fact, stay away. But I mean, good grief! If every movie you watch has Kirk Cameron in it, rethink your life. I'm just saying, don't stop it. Just don't do that to yourself.
Yeah, maybe we should do a podcast on how 104.7 The Fish is like the worst radio station.
Oh my god, man. Yeah.
And if you're listening and you're not in the Atlanta area, that's our local Christian radio station, and it's.
I was listening the other day, and I was like, I'm just gonna turn it on to secular stations. That'd be better than what I'm.
I know.
That might be more godly than what I'm getting from this station.
Yeah, it's like trying to clean your ears with sandpaper. It's just terrible.
Brutal.
Yeah.
So my wild card of the month is actually a recommendation to some the young parents we have watching. I have been wanting to get a little time away with my wife recently, but it can be kind of hard, especially if you have like infants in your home. So we have a 9-month-old. So I guess, is that still infant? I don't know what that is.
I don't know.
In between infant and 1, I don't know. If you're still breastfeeding, it can be difficult to get away. So what we're doing is we're spending a night at Hotel Avalon.
Oh, yeah.
And Hillary's mom is coming to take care of the girls. And so it's nice. So we want to get away, but in case something
Good for
happened,
you, man.
Thanks.
Yeah. You need a night out.
Got to get away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we stored up some gift cards over time. So a lot of it's going to be
like free.
It's like a free getaway.
That's amazing.
In Avalon, you just park and you can do all kind of stuff there.
I know, because we're not in the perimeter.
Right.
It's amazing.
So I'm not going to punish myself just because I live close to Avalon. I'm going to take advantage of Avalon.
Also, if you've noticed how Justin has said it, it's actually Avalon and not the Avalon, which a lot of people say.
Is it?
It is.
It is just Avalon?
It's just Avalon.
Okay. Well,
and if you say the Avalon, the Alpharetta people will get onto you about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're a young parent and you just don't feel ready to like take a vacation with your spouse far away from your kid, do a like close staycation. Do like a 1-night thing away and be close enough to where if something really bad happened, you can run back, but far enough to where you're away.
It's away.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Just throwing that out there. So there's my wild card of the month.
Yeah, that's a great wild card. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about using what's happened with Andrew Cuomo we're going to recently and all over the news, and then the response of some of the Democrats who land on both sides of this issue.
Right.
But, what really brought this topic up to me is how my friends on Facebook have responded to this. And we're going to talk about not just the situation, but the response itself. And what we want to talk about today is how being consistent in your beliefs, calling out what's evil and calling people to what is right, consistency is just as important in a lot of ways than the topic itself, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're not going to just focus on Cuomo. We're not going to pick that apart at all. We're going to talk about the response, how people have responded. So what has been happening with Andrew Cuomo? What's been happening with these allegations, and how have people responded?
Yeah, so upon recording, it's March 15th, so who knows what will have changed by the time you hear this.
Yeah, I know.
Which is one of the reasons we're sticking with the principle. But it goes back to Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, was the media darling as far as COVID-19 response.
Right.
If there was an anti-Trump leader in the minds of the media, it was Andrew Cuomo. He was awarded an Emmy.
Which is crazy.
Emmy,
yeah,
for his COVID-19 briefings. He wrote a book about leadership in crisis in the middle of a crisis while people were still dying. And it became a New York Times bestseller this fall. That's interesting.
Right.
So recently, allegations and proof have come out that his team worked to hide kind of nursing home deaths that came as a result of his order that COVID patients be accepted into nursing homes in New York. So the data was not accurate. They kind of hid the deaths in kind of how they buried it underneath the data. So that happened.
Right.
And that was bad enough. People were starting to get really worked up. And then I think it began with one woman who brought sexual harassment claims against Governor Cuomo.
Right.
And this has spiraled into, I believe it's 7 now.
7 now.
And it's not just verbal sexual harassment claims. Now it's also actual physical sexual misconduct, some of which took place in the governor's mansion.
Right.
Are the allegations. So it's been interesting to see, I guess, number one, someone go from, I think some people have said, hero to zero, so rapidly, of this was the hero of COVID now to he's just under total assault.
Right.
People are calling on him to resign. But also been interesting to see, how people have explored the sexual assault claims differently.
Right.
And I think we want to say, right, is sexual assault is horrific, sinful, abominable, and never acceptable ever.
Right.
And we know various people listening to this may have been assaulted before, or have loved ones that have been assaulted. And so we're not really going to spend time talking about that, but we just want to state clearly, it's horrible, it's sinful. We're sorry for the pain that has been inflicted upon some of you listening because of this, that every time allegations like this come up, you begin to remember your own assault and your own experience. And that's
right.
That's horrific and traumatic. But it is interesting to see often people that were very quick to condemn sexual assault in the case of like Brett Kavanaugh, for example, were very slow to do so with Cuomo.
So just give a summary of what happened with Kavanaugh as well.
Yeah, so Justice Kavanaugh was nominated by Donald Trump to the Supreme Court and went through the confirmation hearing with flying colors. I mean, there were no red flags. There were, there were some partisan bickering back and forth, but it was pretty much over. And then at the 11th hour, essentially, a claim of sexual assault upon Kavanaugh when he was in college was raised by a girl that he went to college with. And this one claim immediately went into a media frenzy. And I mean, the guy was just destroyed.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just destroyed.
Flipped out.
Yeah.
And then
she was called.
This was when the Me Too movement was.
She was called. I mean, almost immediately, the Democratic members of the Senate said, he has to withdraw his nominations, unacceptable candidate. She was brought before the Senate to testify about this alleged assault that happened when she was in college, when he was in college. He got a chance.
I mean, we're talking 40 or 50 years.
Yeah. I mean, it was a long time before. So that is what happened with Kavanaugh. And the allegation was definitely serious when you listened to the woman sharing her testimony. It was horrific. It was sad. It was gut wrenching. The level of dirtiness you saw that she felt because of the assault was it was just horrific. It was horrible all around. And then at the same time, he had a very strong defense, very strongly said none of this is true. So it was very strange.
So what? And just to clarify, what we want to make clear is, rightfully, the claim was investigated.
Of course,
yes. So we're not saying
don't investigate.
It shouldn't have been investigated.
It was a long time ago. Get over it. We're not saying that. Yeah.
We're saying rightly it was investigated. What we're talking about is not the investigation. We're talking about the public response.
Yes.
To the freak out about what this was when there was evidence that Kavanaugh didn't do this, right? And
I would say that there was essentially a lack of evidence on both sides.
Okay, right.
I would say with Kavanaugh, there was a lack of evidence to decisively acquit him or decisively convict him.
Right.
There's just no way to. It was he said, she said.
Right. And then we come up what happened with Biden this past year with Tara Reid. Correct. And now Cuomo. Correct. And then you have the same people, celebrities, media people, people on Facebook who were dragging Kavanaugh through the mud, throwing in shots whenever they could. And there's just been basically silence.
Well, I don't know if I totally agree with that. I would say like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez
has been consistent.
Actually has been thoroughly consistent and pretty quickly called for the resignation of Cuomo.
Right.
And so I will give AOC props here on this podcast. And I actually think AOC is a very consistent person. I disagree with her on a lot
so that actually
of her policies
is where I want to go, is that her, and so the whole thing isn't necessarily we're talking about right or wrong of the response, but what we're talking about is what AOC has communicated with her consistency is she cares about the woman's claim.
Yep.
No matter who the woman is, she cares about the woman's claim. My point is the people who, I'm trying to remember, there's some celebrity that was like dragging Kavanaugh through the mud.
Probably a lot of them, yeah.
And then saying with Biden, well, no, we don't have to believe her. She's probably making it up.
Yep.
What that communicates to me is we don't care about the women here. We just care about
a cause, a political cause.
A political cause.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is I'm not talking like conservatives good, liberals bad. That's not what I'm saying here, because conservatives do this as well.
Everyone does this.
Right? There was a lot of silence about all the bad things that Trump has said and done, right?
Yes.
On the flip side.
Yeah, and I mean, the most clear example was in 2016, in October 2016, when that Access Hollywood tape came out of Trump years before. There were crickets from some people that were, moral majority type of people. It matters what kind of morals our public figures take in place. And they said nothing.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, the hypocrisy is on both sides. We're not here at this podcast saying, look at what the left gets away with that the right doesn't get away with. I mean, there's probably some truth to that, honestly.
Right.
But what we're saying is instead of pointing fingers at people for how inconsistent they are. And when you look at this Cuomo situation, you can do that.
Right.
There are a lot of examples of inconsistent people.
Right.
We want to turn it inward and say,
Yes.
how are we inconsistent in our response to these kinds of things, in our participation in the dialogue on social media on these kind of things?
Right. Right. And so, yeah, the inward thing is probably the best way to describe what we want to talk about today is how are you living your life and how are you backing up the words that you're saying? Are you consistent with if you called out Kavanaugh, which once again, we should have listened to the woman's claim and it should have been investigated. Are you doing the same with Cuomo and Biden or vice versa?
Right.
If you didn't care about Kavanaugh at all, and now you just want to drag some Democrats through the mud, are you doing the same to Cuomo or Biden that the Democrats did to Kavanaugh in, what was that, 17 or whatever that was?
Yeah, whenever, yeah. It's like, are you, when Jesus said when your brother has a speck in his eye, get the log out of your own eye first.
Right.
So I think it's fair to talk about media bias. I think it's fair to talk about how the left is treated differently than the right in our country. I think all those things are fair. But if you watch this situation and you found your heart rejoicing, see, those people on the left are they're more corrupt than, maybe your allegiances are off.
Right.
If in 2016 you found yourself rejoicing over the Donald Trump tape, see that those people on the right, they're the problem.
Right.
Number one, I think if there's any kind of rejoicing in these situations, you need to check your heart because women have been tragically abused and they're coming out trying to share their story. Now, we know, there's all kind of layers to this, but there should be no rejoicing on any of these situations.
Right.
These are tragic claims. With Kavanaugh, it was like, if this happened, that's tragic. If this didn't happen, that's tragic. So no one wins in these things.
Right.
So there should be no rejoicing in our hearts. We just want to take some time to think through some kind of introspection on ourselves because, Facebook and Twitter they're the real things now. So we join these public debates and we join the dialogue and we're saying, how are you joining?
Right.
And the reality is we should be, as Christians, we should be people that stand for truth.
Right.
Regardless of how our side looks.
Right.
So if you're a conservative, if you're a Republican, and one of your people is being accused, it doesn't matter. Truth is truth.
Right. We should seek the truth.
Yeah. And we were talking too on consistency in how vocal or non-vocal you are. You want to talk more about that? If you're vocal all the time, being vocal all the time. If you're non-vocal all the time, being non-vocal all the time.
Yeah, and I think this is mainly what affects this most is how vocal you are, right?
Yeah.
So if you are vocal all the time, your silence says a lot.
Right.
And if you're silent all the time, when you speak up, that also says a lot.
Yes.
So we were talking before this, for example, if you're wondering, well, I looked at your Facebook, you didn't say anything about Kavanaugh or Biden or Cuomo. It's because
exactly.
Right.
You're consistent.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Facebook to me is exhausting.
Yes.
If you see what I post, it's mostly like memes and stuff because in my opinion, Facebook should be used to connect with people and like, what was originally intended for. Oh, I'm sharing this meme with this guy I haven't seen in a couple of years, and we kind of chat for a few minutes on Facebook.
Oh, and
hey, how are you doing?
Ripping people apart?
Right.
Oh, wow, what a concept.
And so, in my opinion, I have opinions, and I'll gladly share them with you, but let's have a face-to-face.
Yep.
Let's talk about it. And we've shared a lot of opinions on this podcast. This is kind of probably my most public space to share my opinions.
Right.
But I've tried to stay out of politics and stay out of controversial things on Facebook, not because I believe everyone should stay silent. It's just my personal preference, right? And so, but I thought, man, I haven't said anything in the past. I can't just rag on Democrats and that be the only thing that I do on Facebook. And what I've seen and what actually caused me to think of this is when the stuff with Kavanaugh was going on, I had some liberal friends on Facebook just blast him and say about how we need to believe women and how we need to, listen to the women, which I agree, we do.
Sure.
If she made a claim, it should have been investigated. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And all the Me Too stuff. And then now, in the past 9 months, since all of these allegations have come against two prominent Democrats, those same people I've seen silent on Facebook. Right. And that's what I meant earlier when I said the silence part. So I think it's most from my Facebook friends. Yep. And what I thought for myself is, though the content of the Me Too movement, for example, I agree with a lot of it. I don't know holistically what the Me Too movement was. I just know it was about like the women who have experienced sexual assault and wanting to be heard. Yeah. I think that's a great thing. Yeah. Right? The content of it, if that's what it is a great thing. But when the Me Too women who started it only speak for some people and not others, that starts to...
It makes you feel like maybe you're not about that. Maybe you're about something
Right.
else. Yeah.
And that starts to unravel like the movement itself to say, what are you actually standing for? Mm-hmm. And what that made me think for myself is, I wonder what people would say about me as a Christian. Right? This is really where I want to end up.
Yeah, that's good.
Is not even, once again, the point of this is not to rag on liberals or conservatives, Democrats or Republicans. It's to talk about, and this is where we want to end, how does my consistency in living as a Christian affect how other people see Christ?
Right. When they look at Daniel Chin on Facebook, on social media, do they go, man, I don't agree with him all the time, but that's a guy that really lets his faith drive everything he does.
Right.
Or do they say, there's Daniel, a hack for the blank political party.
Right.
And he's drank the blank Kool-Aid.
Right.
That's all that he is.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think a lot of times it is true. How we respond to these things as Christians can sometimes make people feel like we're just, representatives, unpaid representatives of a certain political party.
Right.
Instead of, no, I mean, we're gospel first, and when people of our party or our political preference, we're going to treat them and hold them to the same standard that we treat the people on the other side, and vice versa, that the people on the other side were treated with the same standard.
Right.
We're not showing partiality, as James talks about.
Right.
I think it's important. A few Bible verses we thought were significant as we examine this. One, Matthew chapter 5, verse 37. Let what you say simply be yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. Another way we heard it, let your yes be yes and your no be no.
Yeah.
Just consistency in how we talk, what we say. Significant on controversial issues of our day.
Absolutely. And we also had
Romans 12:19 was another one, right? Hate what is evil and cling to what is good. Evil is evil.
Right.
Period. Evil isn't defined by us. It's defined by God and his word. Good is defined not by us, but by God and his word. And we're to hate evil. We're to cling to what is good. And that has nothing to do with political party.
Right.
So when that Access Hollywood tape came out in 2016, what was said in that was evil.
Right.
Period.
Right.
I don't need to, when that came out, what we didn't need, and this is what a lot of people did, that was evil, but what's really evil is Hillary Clinton.
Right.
No, just stop. Just hate what is evil. This is the focus right now. We can deal with her tomorrow, but on this tape, that was evil. With Cuomo, what he did was evil.
Right.
Period. If these claims are true,
Right.
And I would also say, and here's where I guess I would provide a different thing. I think Cuomo deserves his due process.
Sure.
I think we still do live in a country of innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
And so, but I would have said that for Kavanaugh, and I will say that for Cuomo.
Right.
I think they deserve due process. I think the women who are making these claims deserve to be heard.
Right.
And then I believe he, as a human being, deserves to be investigated in a fair and impartial kind of setting.
Right. And that's what I'm saying too. You're being consistent, right?
Right.
When Kavanaugh, once again, we keep bringing up Kavanaugh because it's a similar situation. You would say Kavanaugh needs his due process, and we can't just say he's guilty right away.
Right.
And you're saying that about Cuomo as well.
Right.
And so what that communicates to me is that you're about the truth, not about a political party.
Right.
And I think that's important for us as we talk about anything you believe in. So if you're not a Christian listening to us, this affects you too.
Absolutely.
Because if you are only calling for justice for one person and not justice for the other person because they're a different political party than you or they believe something different than you, that communicates something to the people that are watching.
Yep.
And if you are a Christian, I'll read this from 2 Corinthians 5:20. It says, "Therefore we are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God." We're the ambassadors for Christ. So people's first impression of God oftentimes are God's people. Mm-hmm. And so where I've seen this, even if you just take political stuff out of this, for example, I don't know if you've seen this before, but I've definitely seen it. And I've been guilty about this in the past. And as I've become a pastor and still a pastor, it's important to remember to be above reproach for this reason.
Yeah.
But I've seen this where you have someone. I worked in college ministry, and I remember there would be a few people that were so gung-ho about sharing the gospel. And they would go share the gospel, and then 2 nights later, they'd go get hammered. Or they would gossip behind people's backs.
Right.
Or they would try to undermine someone else in the ministry or talk badly about them. Or they would, be kind of living in this open sin.
Yeah.
And what do people see? It's very confusing.
Yeah.
You're preaching this message of holiness, righteousness, grace, and truth.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're living your life in a totally different way. Mm-hmm. And that consistency matters, right? We need to always stand up. Like if we're going to share the gospel, we need to share the gospel with our words and with our life. Mm-hmm. And we need to share the gospel with the people, all sorts of people, whenever we have the chance. We can't just pick and choose, right? And that's how people get the impression. I feel like I've heard of a lot of people in the past or even currently talk about how some churches only want to share with rich people or good-looking people or a certain people of a certain race or people of a certain income level, and that communicates something.
Yep.
If you only share the gospel with rich people and refuse to share the gospel with poor people,
right,
then is your concern the gospel or is it rich people?
Right. Yep.
And you could do this with race or whatever else.
Well, and I think this may feel kind of random to people. I think this is one of the greatest blessings of expository preaching. And this is something I've seen. 2020 was such a crazy year. I joked that if we had created sermon series for everything that was going on in 2020, we would have had like 52 sermon series, one per week.
Right.
Because so much happened. But also, what you choose to preach on and speak on, if you're reacting to the culture around you, is a choice, right? So you're choosing to react to some things, you're choosing not to react to other things. And that can reveal some bias too. The nice part about expository preaching is it's just the next text in the book.
Right.
And whatever the text says, that's what I'm going to say on Sunday. And I think that kind of guards you against, well, why did you speak on this but not on this?
Right.
Why did you have a single sermon after this politician did this, but you said nothing when this politician did that.
Right.
So yeah, I think just learning. I feel like if there was a theme to this podcast, it would be Romans 12:9. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good.
Always.
And
Don't have
let
your
Facebook reflect that.
Yeah. And don't have a stipulation on it, right? Don't hate what is evil from the people who you believe are evil, but if someone who you think is pushing your good,
you're like, well, the
does
greater
something
good,
evil.
the greater good would say that I kind of be quiet about this because their policies will do more good.
Right.
No, just speak the truth always.
Yeah.
And then just let God take care of the results.
Right, because at the end of the day, we're representing Christ, and we don't want people, my biggest fear, I think, even as a pastor, is the way I live and the way I talk makes people think that God only loves a certain type of people.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And I think this is what as I was having these thoughts, what eventually led me to.
Yeah.
Is, man, we got to, as Christians, be very aware of that. And don't get me wrong, and I know people just take things to the extreme. We're not saying that you have to mention every time any little thing happens.
Yeah, it's exhausting. Yeah.
It's exhausting. You can't think about every little thing that ever happens. But as Justin said earlier, this is a podcast where we just want you to introspectively ask yourself, am I consistent with what I am, the evil I'm speaking out against, and the good that I'm speaking for?
Yeah.
And maybe that's the ultimate question, right?
Yeah. Are you being consistent?
Yeah. Are you always speaking out against the evil, no matter who's committing it? And are you always pushing for good, no matter who's doing the good, right? So,
yeah, good and challenging stuff to think about. Well, thanks for joining us for this one-off on Monday Musings, talking about consistency in our public response. We will be back next week to talk about Easter and how the resurrection is central to the Christian faith and how we should talk about it and even defend it to those who don't believe it. We'll talk to you then. Thanks. Bye.